Well, welcome everybody. This is the third of our 7-part webinar series for the Central Florida Battle of the Buildings. So my name is Michelle Wheat, and I'm the chair of the Central Florida Energy Efficiency Alliance, most commonly known to folks in the Central Florida area as SOFIA. I'm joined this morning by Brittany Sellers with the City of Orlando Office of Sustainability and Energy, Tara Hare with the U.S. EPA Water Sense Program, and Birds Bradford with TLC Engineering for Architecture. Before we get started, I did want to give a special thank you to both Chip Tatum and Monica Ramsey with the Apartment Association of Greater Orlando for hosting the platform for the webinar series. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on the Battle webpage later on this week at www.cfbotb.org. And a quick run through of the agenda, we're going to give a brief overview of what is the Central Florida Battle of the Buildings. Then we're going to dive right into water savings and energy, water use in commercial facilities, best practices, along with some case studies, the great water sense tools and resources that the EPA has available, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So what is the Central Florida Battle of the Building? It is a free, fun, competitive competition that is open to any commercial type business in the Central Florida area. And when we say Central Florida, it's a 7-county radius that includes Brevard, Volusia, Lake, Osceola, Seminole, and Orange counties. Any facility that is in those boundary areas is able to sign up for the challenge. And 16 of our categories. The challenge runs from July 1st through December 31st. Participants of the challenge will have January 1st to enter their information into Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is the tool that we are using to track and then ultimately judge and assess to give out awards in those categories. And speaking of awards, these are 16 categories. As you can see, we've got commercial, warehouses, hotels, retail, medical, public assembly. So that's going to be your places of worship, civic centers, auditoriums, restaurants, mixed use, and multifamily. And taking into consideration both large and small facilities, that's why we have awards that will be given out for those greater than and less than for those categories. One of the great things about the Battle of the Buildings is we have partnered up with the University of Central Florida to do an energy specialist program. We have about 25 students that have gone through the training course and are available to any participant in the Battle of the Buildings. So if you're not too sure about how to enter your stuff into Portfolio Manager, just have questions, you can have an energy specialist assigned directly to you. And again, more information and the sign up for your energy specialist is located at the Battle website at www.tfbotb.org. And before we get into the meat of the great presentation we have for you guys today, I just wanted to give a moment to thank our Battle sponsors. One of the great things about the Central Florida Battle of the Building is that all of the resources that we have provided to participants have been free of charge. The Energy Specialist Program, we have hands-on Portfolio Manager 101, 201 training that's held every month, and of course this webinar series. And that would not be possible if it weren't for the wonderful sponsors that you see listed here. So with that, we'll dive right into.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, Michelle. This is Brittany Sellers with the City of Orlando, and I'd like to take a few moments to discuss our unique water landscape here in our state and why taking steps to preserve this resource is so vital for our health, the economy, and the legacy we leave behind. So when you think about Florida, chances are you think about water, and that might be the fact that we're a peninsula and surrounded by it, but also the water that's inland in our state. Florida is the land of 1,000 springs, actually quite literally, and we have not only abundant lakes, beautiful rivers, but more springs than any other place on earth. Proceed to the next slide. We know as Floridians that we have a strong connection to the water. It shapes many of our memories, experiences, our local economy. We know that being outside and enjoying nature is a moving experience for many people and improves our mental health. We all have a strong connection to our lakes, rivers, and the springs that feed them. For us, water is not just a necessity, but a way of life. However, we need to act to protect this resource as we're currently overpumping the aquifer, which is leading to a variety of problems. Every day, more than 4 billion gallons of water are pumped from the Florida aquifer, which is the underground system that provides the main source of drinking water for much of our state. And when it comes to water overuse, our natural ecosystem can signal when the situation is getting dire. Already, Florida's freshwater system is showing sign of stress. You can proceed to the next slide. This diagram demonstrates how our activity on the surface impacts the aquifer below. Overpumping diminishes spring flows. In some cases, our natural springs have dried up completely or faced irreversible effects, such as Spring Creek Springs, one of the state's most powerful springs, which reversed its flow in 2006 due to overpumping. Another problem, which is known as saltwater intrusion, this happens when water levels in the aquifer drop and saltwater flows in from the coast, poisoning freshwater supplies. Overpumping can lead to habitat loss for the creatures who depend on fresh water, including our hundreds of manatees who winter at our local springs. Overpumping can also contribute to habitat loss for humans by increasing the frequency of sinkholes that puts the very land where we build our homes and businesses at risk. Next slide, please. Here are some of the measurable declines we've seen in spring levels across the state just over the last few years. Clearly, this is a statewide problem and a severe indication of problems that are occurring at a deeper level. Next slide. And this simple image of a bucket, I think, provides a better example of how just a small drop in these springs, like what we've seen, is an indication of not only a more serious problem occurring below, but an issue with the source of our water at large. And a severe cause for concern. Next slide. Of course, what we're here to talk about today is the fact that there's hope. Despite our growing population, we've seen decreases in overall freshwater demand due in large part to the types of conservation efforts that start with efficiency measures like the ones we'll be sharing with you today. We know that together, our collective action can protect these valuable resources for generations to come, and we're excited that you want to get involved.
So in addition to the reasons that Brittany just mentioned, we have several others that I'll just touch on. The first of all being that saving water saves on operational costs and helps you prepare for emergencies and other issues. So if you save your money on reducing your water use, you can save money on energy and your water utility bills. And this can be extremely important when the two are mixed together or added together. In many places across the country and throughout Florida, energy, water, and sewer rates are increasing rapidly. And one of the things that you can do to really insulate yourself from these future increases is to reduce your water use. And then also, it's very helpful to know what to do during a water restriction, during a drought or shortage, so that you can really minimize the impact of the restrictions on your operations. And then another aspect is to gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Tenants and hotel guests will often pay more for green properties, especially when you can provide them with more information that can help them manage their operations. And then also doing some of these water efficiency actions will help to fulfill the requirements for building certification, such as LEED. The energy and water are closely connected. We call it the water energy nexus. Basically, every gallon of water has an energy footprint that's needed to pump, move, heat, and treat water. So saving water can save energy and vice versa. And actually, up to about 8% of a commercial building's energy use is actually used to heat water. And that's about the same amount as used for cooling and ventilation. So it is a pretty significant use in most commercial buildings. Because of this, you can see very large savings from reducing hot water usage in mechanical systems, commercial kitchen equipment, and in your laundry and sanitary systems. Because of this connection, evaluating water and energy together really provides you with the best results when you're evaluating projects and can give you the greatest resource and cost saving. So the WaterSense program was created to help you with all of these things. WaterSense was created as a voluntary program by EPA in 2006, and we really tried to provide a simple way to identify water efficient products, programs, practices, and homes. So each product that receives the label, which is on the right side of your screen, has been independently tested and certified for water efficiency and performance. So the WaterSense program was originally created and wanted to make sure that the products performed just as well as their standard counterparts. So each specification includes specific performance requirements to make sure that it works just as well as others. So the WaterSense program has seven labeled product categories, and many of those are used indoors, and all of them have commercial applications. So these are something that you may be able to use throughout your property, and it includes flushing urinals, shower heads, lavatory faucets, tank type and flushometer valve toilets that you would see in a commercial building, and then prevent spray valves, which would be used in a kitchen to rinse the dishes, and the irrigation controllers that can be used outdoors to manage your irrigation water. And more than 25,000 different product models have earned the label to date. You can search for them on our website at epa.gov/watersense. The other thing that I want to mention is that water factors are also included in many of the Energy Star certified products. So when you were looking for an efficient product, you can know that WaterSense and Energy Star labels will be your best efficient bet. So every building is different, but we wanted to give you just a basic profile of how water is used in different types of buildings. So as you can see here, we have a basic workup for hospitals, offices, schools, restaurants, and hospitality. And each one of them, you can see on the bottom, has a very significant portion of the blue bar, which is the sanitary or restroom systems. And this is something that is across the board going to be a very good area to look for water efficient savings. And then the second is the red bar is cooling and heating, which we're going to talk about today. That's another area where you can find very good energy and water savings across the board. And then if you have a large landscape or a significant landscape, then you may have a specific portion of your water use going to that, and it can be significant with the green bars that you see. So every building is different, and going through and doing a water assessment and really taking a look at all of the areas of water use within your building is going to help you target which areas to actually reduce. So one of the ways to do this is, one of the most important ways I want to say, is paying attention to your metering and sub-metering. So water meters basically can cover the whole building, or they could have one meter for multiple buildings. So we call that the master meter, and that's usually the one from the utility, and it basically covers the entire facility. So what you really want to do is, if you have other sources of water like a well or a spring, as Brittany mentioned, you want to really meter all of those sources so that you can identify where you can target your reductions. And on the more micro level, one of the things that you can do that can really help is to sub-meter your specific end uses. And this is something that you can do with a temporary flow meter or a water monitoring device. There are many different technologies available, and this can help you with large uses that you really want to monitor closely, such as a cooling tower, your irrigation water, or another large system that you have within your facility. So one thing that's different than energy in the water world, sub-meters do not have to be on separate utility accounts. This can just be something that you do within your own facility for your own management uses. So it's not as complicated as maybe adding a sub-meter in the electricity area. And this is one of the ways that you can use to really quickly identify leaks and other malfunctions within your equipment that can help save a lot of money on the other side. So one of the things I really want to drive home is that the cost of water may seem cheap, but it's really deceptive. So one of the things that I really want to encourage or let you know is that facilities actually pay for water twice. So water waste really adds up fast. You're paying for the water that comes into your facility and the water that's discharged to the sewer. And this is basically happens across the country, and basically that means that you're paying for your water twice. So this also doesn't include the cost of energy that's needed to pump and heat the water. So when you're looking at different costs and different projects, you really want to look at the true cost of water, which is the combination of your water and sewer rate times the volume of water used, and plus the cost of fees and other associated things. So it can add up more quickly than you think. And other costs can really come with higher volume water usage. And these are things like additional detergent, additional chemical costs, increased equipment maintenance because you're using it more, and then also increased energy costs for heating and pumping this extra water that you don't actually need to be using. So along that line, because these things add up so quickly, leaks can be one of the greatest sources of waste within your facility. And this is not just a waste of water, but it's also a waste of money. And the leaks can actually add up to about 6% of the water use within your facility. And one of the reasons for this, that it's particularly important, is that water continues flowing if there's an equipment or fixture malfunction in most cases. So in the energy world, the energy stops flowing if a circuit is broken, but in water, that just continues to flow or leaks if there's a problem. And because of this, water use needs to be really verified periodically at the end use for each, over time to check for leaks. This is because most fixtures and equipment in the water area have physical components that can break down, including valves, flappers, pipes, gaskets, and other components. And broken parts may not stop the fixture from working, but they can significantly reduce efficiency of the fixture while leaking. And the other thing that happens is that some of these leaks and continuously running water are not always visible, but they can have a huge impact. So one of the things you can do is really, if you have a building management system, you may want to make sure that it can alert the staff to a water leak problem as quickly as possible so that you don't find out later when you get a large bill from your water utility. And then because of this, some small changes to your standard operating procedures can really make significant reductions in water use, and they usually don't cost very much. So looking for leaks can be a really significant way to reduce your water use and make sure your building's running efficiently. So some of the things you can do is read your meters during off-peak hours so that you can see if it's running when you don't expect it to be. And then also you can compare your monthly readings over time, and that will also help you so that you can see how the water use kind of varies over time, because with the changes in the seasons, as with energy, there are changes in the water use because of increased irrigation and increased water use during the summer, for example. So in terms of detection, you really want to try to install leak detection systems on your large equipment and failure abatement devices. And this is basically to alert you as soon as possible that there's a problem so that you're not caught off guard when there's a huge leak or there's a huge problem with your cooling tower, for example. The other thing you can do is really look and listen while you're walking around your facility. And this can be just to look for dripping or flowing water in mechanical spaces and making sure that you don't have anything that you don't expect, basically. And the other thing you may want to check is to make sure that if you see any discharge to your floor drains, that may be a problem as well. So this is something that's there for, problems, the floor drain, but you don't want it to be used all the time necessarily, because that's just water going down the drain that you're paying for twice. So the other thing is also running restroom fixtures that can be just continuously flushing toilets that are on sensors, phantom flushes they're sometimes called, or dripping faucets, dripping shower heads. Those things will add up quickly even though it doesn't seem like much. And then in your irrigation system, if you're seeing puddles outdoors on sidewalks or other areas that you don't want there to be puddles, that you can say that that's a leak or other issue. So one of the other things that you can do is really to train your staff and inform your guests or visitors or employees, other employees, so that they can help you identify and fix these leaks as fast as possible. So you really, it does help to post signage in restrooms and kitchen areas and other mechanical spaces to alert people to look for leaks, and also to let them know how to report it if it's an issue. So it can be very helpful to have a sign, kind of like the one we have on the slide here, that basically just will help them so that they kind of understand the problem with a little factoid, as we call them, and then also the phone number, which is key to alert people and actually help you be able to find it and fix it as quickly as possible. So water savings in restrooms, as I mentioned, it can be very significant, and restrooms can account for up to 40% of your water use within a facility. And this really depends on how many restrooms you have. And also, if there are older fixtures that were installed before 1994, they can use 3 to 5 times more water than the newer efficient models. And that can be a very significant savings if you have an old toilet. Sometimes toilets do last that long, and it could be a huge amount of water for no reason, basically. So another thing to remember is that water savings really depend on user behavior, just like energy does. And so educating users, as we mentioned, can be extremely helpful and can help make sure that you're reducing problems or issues as soon as possible. So the WaterSense program, as I mentioned before, has specifications for most of the efficient fixtures that you could use in a restroom. So we've gone through and made a table here for you to kind of give you a quick resource or thing to look at to see what you actually could be doing in your facility. The only one that's not currently labeled are the public restroom faucets, and that's because the standard for the national standard basically is very efficient on its own. So it can be, these are all savings that you can find with the new models that are already on the market. But otherwise, you can look for the WaterSense label and really know that you're getting an efficient product. So some of the things that you can do that don't really cost that much money is to really ensure that your toilets, faucets, and urinals are working correctly, and making sure that you inspect your valves annually and replace any worn parts that you see. You can also adjust your automatic sensors on your fixtures to avoid double or phantom flushes and avoid faucets running longer than necessary. This is also calibrating your sensors, basically. And then if you are having a lot of faucets, twisting on a faucet aerator can be very inexpensive and save you a ton of money. The aerators basically just twist on, it's at the end of the faucet, and they're only about $5 to $10 each, so they can actually save you a lot of money down the road. And then if you are doing a retrofit or replacement project and you're only doing toilets, you may want to prioritize the women's restroom for the greatest amount of savings, because women use the toilets all day. But the male restrooms or the men's restrooms actually use a combination of toilets and urinals. So the best savings in the men's restroom would be a combination of the two. So you really want to make sure, if you can, to inspect and remove scale buildup on all of your fixtures. This can happen due to hard water or other water chemistry issues, and can reduce the efficiency of the fixture. So it can be very helpful, especially in faucets and shower heads, to check for scaling and reduce the buildup if you can. So in the outdoor realm, about 20 to 30% of your building's water use can be used outdoors. Especially if you have a very large outdoor landscape, this can be a significant amount of water. And then from our experience and some of the studies that have been done, as much as 50% of the water we use outdoors is wasted because of inefficient watering methods and systems. So it can be a really, really big savings to take a look at your outdoor water system. Because a lot of these losses are really caused by poor irrigation system design or improper system installation and management, or lack of maintenance. That can be a huge one, as well as improper scheduling. Schedule your watering at times when it's not appropriate, or watering during the actual rain event, for example. So we actually have a group of irrigation professionals that are across the country, and many of them are in Florida, and they've actually taken an exam that requires them to know more water efficiency things. So they've been tested to make sure that they are knowledgeable in these areas. So you can go onto our website and find an irrigation professional in your area to help you with this. Some of the other things that you can do, it starts with landscaping, really. So a well-designed, healthy, water-efficient landscape really includes healthy soils to make sure that the water that is coming from the rain and from your irrigation system can infiltrate the soil and actually get to the roots of the plants. And that can help them grow and be stronger and hardier over time. You also want to make sure that you are making the least amount of grading that you can with gentle slopes, so that you're not having a really steep, if you can avoid it, a really steep slope where you're trying to grow grass, for example. You can also use mulch to help keep the landscapes soils cool and moist. And then one of the big things that we really want to let you know is that you can pick plants that are more appropriate for your region and your climate, and they can be more drought tolerant, and they usually require less watering than others. So there are actually databases that you can check to see what's actually appropriate for the area near you. And there's actually a Florida-friendly database at the Florida Water Star website that you can check out to make sure that you're using the right plants. The other thing that you can do is minimize your turf area, your grass, and by using these appropriate plants and watering them effectively, which is called hydrozoning, basically. So with the irrigation system, you really want to make sure, if you have an irrigation system, that it's operating as you want it to be operating. So you really need to make sure that you update your irrigation schedules regularly, and you can actually schedule each zone separately. And that's basically what I was just saying about hydrozoning, is where you place plants that are similar in one area so that you can actually just target your irrigation to that area and not have to water the entire landscape to get the water to that one plant that needs it more. So this makes sense for things like trees, flower beds, things like that, that you could want more precise control over what you are watering. So the other thing that you can do is to install water meters on your outdoor water use. So you can actually just put a sub-meter basically on your outdoor water, your irrigation system, for example, and that can help you really identify inefficiencies and leaks as quickly as possible. So some of the things that you really want to do in terms of maintenance are to make sure that if there are any areas where pavement or hardscapes are being watered, you really want to make sure that you're adjusting those sprinkler components, because the watering the pavement doesn't do anything for anyone. So the other thing that you want to do is, if you want to replace broken sprinkler heads as soon as possible. We often call them geysers, because if there's a broken one, it can shoot up several feet in the air like a water fountain, basically, and that's a huge water waste, basically. The other thing you can do is audit your irrigation system using an irrigation professional certified by one of the WaterSense labeled programs. And those are the people, as I was just talking about, and you can find them on the irrigation portion of our website. And also, they have some very specific irrigation resources for Florida on the Florida Water Star website. So I encourage you, if you're interested in looking at your outdoor water use, take a look at that and really see what kinds of things you could be doing.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Tara. My name is Burns Bragg. I'm with TLC Engineering. I am pleased to be doing this and pleased that I can help out and talk about something I know and love, which are the mechanical systems. One interesting thing that I've thought is over the past few years, we've gotten very good at making mechanical systems very efficient on the energy side, but now it is time to have a good focus on making the mechanical systems water efficient as well. Mechanical systems can account for up to 30% of water use in a commercial facility. Because of the water and energy used, this can be a great place to look for significant savings and dip in both the utility bill and the water bill at the same time. First thing to do is really eliminate the single pass cooling systems whenever possible. These systems only use water once before it is discharged to the sewer, and they can be really inefficient. Single pass cooling systems actually can use 40 times more water than a cooling tower or another heat rejection source cooling the same heat load. Depending on this equipment, it can also be retrofitted with a recirculating system or sometimes be replaced by an air-cooled system. General rule of thumb is if the water is not going to touch a person, you should at least try and use it twice because it's just a great way to maintain savings. Another good way to save water in a mechanical system is regularly check all your systems for water and steam leaks because the magnitude of these leaks is so much greater than leaks in, say, 1 or 2 drippy faucets. Overall, operating and maintaining a good HVAC and steam systems properly will help maximize energy and water efficiency. Continuing a little more, the cooling towers are often the largest user of water in a facility, running between 20 to 50% of a total facility water use, and they use a lot of energy to pump water through a system continuously. Some cooling towers use a single pass systems, but these should be eliminated and retrofitted with a recirculating system, and so we can start maintaining higher cycles of concentration throughout. Cooling towers, you lose water through the evaporation. This is the primary function of the equipment, and it's not the focus of our water efficiency efforts. This is what they use to actually cool the water. The goal for cooling towers is more to, as I said, maximize the cycles of concentration, an indicator of the number of times the water has been recirculated before it's discharged to the sewer. One good thing is we have facility managers who are submetering makeup and blow down water and detecting leaks to measure the evaporation losses so they can actually understand and optimize their water use in cooling towers and boilers. Next slide, please. So talking about single pass cooling water, if present, it really has potential to be the single greatest water waster in a commercial facility. It's a situation where the city water is plumbed to a piece of equipment to remove heat, typically from a motor or compressor, and after use, the water goes right down the drain, doesn't hit anything else, and it's almost just a waste of using some good cool water. Single pass cooling is commonly used to cool medical and laboratory equipment, vacuum pumps, air compressors, and refrigeration systems. And often the flow of this water is controlled with a solenoid valve, so the water flows when a motor or compressor is running. Unfortunately, and with some really old models, where the valve fails, the water just flows continuously. And when this water is flowing continuously, you're just going to see a lot of water used as we go to the next slide. So this slide illustrates the potential magnitude of a leak, or if a solenoid valve isn't working, or something happens in this particular equipment or systems where water flows continuously. This is the magnitude of water used by equipment with single pass cooling, or we also have ice machines, food disposals, and other medical systems or mechanical systems. While some may seem insignificant, they all add up to some pretty significant costs. On the left, where the flow appears to be not much more than a trickle, if this is happening, this would consume about 500,000 gallons of water per year and cost about $4,000 at average water and sewer rates. Once we get to the far right, you see the flow equivalent to a garden hose at full flow. If that's going 24/7, it would be 3 million gallons of water per year and over $26,000 in water savings. These flows can be occurring within your mechanical rooms or in other spaces where appliances or equipment require cooling. We did work with one facility with a supplemental air conditioning unit consuming 7 GPM unknown to them. Once they found out what it was costing them, over $20,000 a year, they replaced it immediately to realize the savings they were having. Next slide, please. So there are some good alternatives to single pass cooling. Ideally, again, we've harped on this a couple of slides now, but eliminate all instances of single pass cooling where you can. We can do this by replacing water-cooled equipment with air-cooled equipment, or providing cooling water from an existing chilled water loop, or making another heat rejection loop somewhere. We have worked with several facilities that have replaced single-pass water-cooled air conditioning units with energy-efficient air-cooled units, and the resulting water and cost savings have been significant. In cases where you can't eliminate single-pass water use, make sure you're using the absolute minimum quantity needed. Check the equipment specifications and make sure the maximum temperature rise in water is happening, and that will help minimize your water use as well. Also, make sure the water is controlled with the motor or compressor so it'll turn off when it's not running, so you can't use or waste any extra water. If the system doesn't have a water control valve, you can install one to shut off cooling water when there is no heat load. The solenoid valves typically control this, but they can oftentimes need maintenance as well, so verify they're working and perform maintenance periodically. And in some cases, single-pass cooling water can be reused for another purpose, but it's best ideally to eliminate it where we can. Next slide. So cooling towers, harped on these, continue to harp on these. Cooling towers work through evaporation. That's the primary function of the cooling tower, and that's how the heat is actually taken out of your system on your condensing water side. Evaporation is not the focus of this water efficiency, but anything we can do to make our chiller plant more energy efficient will lower our cooling load and thereby reduce the amount of water needed for evaporation. All cooling towers have a discharge water stream referred to as either blow down or bleed off. Sorry. We'll call it, blow down here. The reason for the blowdown is to keep minerals and dissolved solids from building up in the water circulated through the tower. The makeup water supplied to the tower contains dissolved solids. As water evaporates, these solids that stay in the circulation begin to get concentrated over time. If the concentrations get too high, the solids will begin to form scale on the surfaces of the chiller system, which can degrade performance or damage equipment. Therefore, some water is regularly discharged or blown down to keep these dissolved solids in check. One other way to do this is to coordinate with your water treatment vendor so you are able to maintain a high enough cycles of concentration, but not completely injure or hurt your cooling towers at the same time. To control your blowdown, it's typically used by a conductivity meter and a controller, and careful blowdown control will really offer the best opportunity for savings in the cooling tower system. You may also lose some water due to drift or splash out. And in a well-designed tower, this would actually be pretty minimal, but if you're noticing visible droplets exiting the tower, or every time you walk by the tower you get a little wet, you should probably spend some time and attention looking at your tower as well. Next slide. So to maximize the water efficiency of your cooling tower, you really want to pay careful attention to the quantity of makeup water and blowdown water being used. If it's equipped with especially if you can equip it with meters. If you don't have meters, consider installing them. You don't know what you don't measure. So sub-metering, as Tara was talking about earlier, is really important for making sure that you actually know and can benchmark and improve your benchmarks on your system. As we said, pay regular attention to the conductivity of the water in your tower and calculate your cycles of concentration. If you are not getting the high enough cycles as expected or low enough, it may mean your control system is not working properly, or there's an unintentional loss of water from the tower. Sometimes this is a result of the fill valve not shutting off properly, so that's another thing it's good to keep a maintenance eye on. When maximizing your cycles of concentration, you should work with a water treatment vendor that shares your goal to achieve water efficiency. Working together, establishing target cycles of concentration based on your local water chemistry and water treatment plan will help keep your cooling tower operating in a good place and also keep your water bill down. Also, with your makeup of blowdown water meters, evaluate the ratio of makeup to blowdown quantity as a double check on your cycles of concentration, just a quick back of the math calculation. And typically, your treatment vendor will leave behind or send you a written report of the status of your cooling tower chemistry each time they visit to check your system. This is often done on a monthly basis, and review the reports to make sure your cycles of concentration are being maintained. Next slide, please. One great thing to consider is using air handler condensate recovery for your cooling tower as some makeup water. Air handler condensate is a great alternative source of water because it's free of minerals and total dissolved solids, and it's cooler than ambient air. Condensate is typically drained into the sewer or storm, but since it's generated in highest quantity when the load on your cooling tower is the highest, it's a great source of cold, clean water because as you need more cooling in your building, you're going to need your cooling towers to ramp up. One of the unfortunately hardest parts of using this project is the plumbing required to get water from the air handlers to the cooling tower. But if the pipe runs aren't too long or too complicated, or your central energy plant is close enough to your building, this can be very cost effective. We've been able to implement this in some facilities, and many of them have seen great paybacks, some of which even see great energy paybacks, because you're actually getting colder water that you're able to use to cool down your system and make sure that you have, with that colder water, you're making sure that you maintain a lower basin temperature and even a higher efficiency on your chiller side. So going from there, next slide, we have two hospitals that I've worked on or been part of that I wanted to just discuss with you quickly on what they did for some water efficiency measures. So this is Florida Hospital Kissimmee Bed Tower, located in Kissimmee. This one's over in Osceola County, and it's a 3-story, 80-bed tower. On the lead water efficiency credits, we were able to project a 23% reduction in domestic water savings and a 43% reduction in process water savings. Some of the things we used were dual flush toilets, low flow public faucets, pint flush urinals, low flow patient showers, and water efficient process equipment. So in the recommendation in the kitchen, instead of using a disposal, is using a food pulper or something else that uses less water that can still get the task done at hand. Next slide. One other facility where we were able to realize really large water savings was Lakeland Regional Health Women's and Children's Pavilion. I know Lakeland is a little outside of our 7-county radius for Central Florida, but it's a pretty local facility that we have pretty similar climates and area construction areas and such. This is a massive 8-story tower. It's got a NICU, PEDS, ED, surgical suites, labor and delivery, pediatric patient rooms, a huge auditorium so it can see a lot of people coming in and out, and the central energy plant was actually 2 stories. So it's a really, really large project that we did. We are still calculating how much processed water we're saving, but on the domestic side, we had a 33% reduction using the similar processes that we used in the Kissimmee Patient Tower. The toilets, metering public faucets was really helpful, and making sure we had sub-meters throughout, because again, you don't know what you don't measure. And then Tara would like to talk about something very helpful with Orlando and our industry as well.
Yes, so we have worked with several hotels to help them manage their water use more effectively, and we actually did a hotel challenge specifically in 2014 and 15. So we have a lot of information on our website that's specific for hotels, and I know there are so many of them in the Orlando area. So I just wanted to touch on this. Even though it's a Seattle example, it still applies to everything that you all are doing. So this was a facility that had about 1,200 guest rooms and a huge meeting space that's about 74,000 square feet. They also had 3 restaurants and a pool and fitness center. So there were many different areas of the facility where the water was being used. So one of the things that they did was to really start doing regular water audits, and they started sub-metering their cooling towers and their irrigation systems and irrigation controllers. And they were able to actually switch to water to air cooling systems for their steam boiler condensate. And that was able to save them about 1 million gallons of water per year. And it actually was a pretty quick payback period in terms of the cost. So it was a really significant reduction that they were able to achieve quickly. Monitoring also discovered a ruptured water heating coil, and that had been causing significant leaks and overflow issues basically around their heating system in their HVAC system basically. So it was something that they were able to catch before they got the giant water bill, which can be a very significant savings, because finding out a month later can be helpful, but it's not ideal. So they were able to actually fix this and reduce their losses as soon as possible. They also replaced their guest room, restroom fixtures with WaterSense labeled models, because they are appropriate for a residential bathroom or a one in a hotel. And this also had led to significant savings, especially because it's used 24/7. So they also converted their laundry system to a tunnel washer with built-in water recycling, and this is actually really significant in terms of the laundry that's being done for a facility at this magnitude. And this was a huge amount of savings to them, and they were able to save on detergent and energy costs as well. So in all of this, they were able to reduce their water use by 5% and their energy by 31%. So, you know, we talk about energy and water savings being linked, but saving 30% of your energy really, I think, boosted their score within Portfolio Manager, as well as just saving them a ton of money. So overall, just the water savings portion in 2015 was $36,500. And that's significant, especially considering the amount of money that they saved as well in the energy area. So if you are a hotel or you work with hotels, I encourage you to take a look at our website, because we do have a whole list of resources that are just tailored to hotels. So I want to give you guys, give a shout out to some of the Florida specific resources that are available, because you all have some very great programs that are located near you and can be extremely helpful. So one of them is the Florida Water Star program, and this is a certification program for new and existing homes and commercial developments. But it also just has a whole bunch of technical manuals and references. So there's a ton of stuff on their website that is tailored to Florida. So I encourage you to take a look at that, because it was really awesome. So this is also where the landscaping and irrigation resources were, including that searchable list of the Florida friendly plant database. So there's a ton of stuff there for you. There's also the Central Florida Water Initiative, which has a bunch of resources that you can use throughout your facility, and it's good, very specific to you all. Resource. And then as you are starting to do some of your water assessments and water audits, there is a whole bunch of information in a guide that the South Florida Water Management District created, and it actually goes in a step-by-step process to evaluate water within a facility. So you can use that you can use the whole thing, or you can use parts of it, but it is very helpful because it can guide you through evaluating some of these systems and fixtures. So the WaterSense program has a ton of resources on our website, as I mentioned. We have information by facility type. We also have a guidebook of best management practices, and that goes through 36 best practices for different equipment throughout your commercial facility. So it basically covers every water using fixture and mechanical system or other system basically in the facility, and covers the water that you could save during operation and maintenance, retrofits, and in the replacement of these products or systems. We have a whole bunch of water saving tips and some assessment tools that can help you. We also have worksheets and checklists that you can just print out and take with you around your facility, and it can guide you through finding some of these things. And then we also have a whole bunch of live and recorded training webinars that are available. This includes an entire 2-year series of webinars specifically for hotels, and another 2-year series that is specific to any commercial building, basically, that we did with Energy Star. We also have a bunch of case studies. So we have about, I think we're up to 19 or 20 at this point, and they're in all different types of sizes of facilities. So I encourage you to take a look on our website and see what there is that can help you. So one of the things that we're continuing to do, if you guys are interested in learning more or hearing more about this, I'm doing a whole nother few webinars throughout the 2017 year, and we'll be continuing into 2018 as well. So some of these are actually quite helpful. One of them is to just how you can add water to your energy efficiency efforts. So how you would add water into your energy audits or into your operating procedures to help you with that. And then we're doing a very specific webinar on sanitary fixtures and equipment in October. And that I'm going to go through a whole bunch of the specifics of the restroom fixtures and also laundry facility. And then basically you can listen to that and learn a lot more. And then one of them I just want to point out is the Water Wednesday Showcase that we're doing in November. This is just case studies from Energy Star partners that have been doing water efficiency projects. So it was really interesting. We did one in May, and that's actually available on our website. You can listen to it. But the new ones are going to be really interesting as well. So a shout out to our battle sponsors. Michelle, I don't know if you want to wrap up the rest of it or if we want to go to questions.
Yeah, no, I just had a couple more things, but first off, Tara, Burns, and Brittany, thank you. That was a lot of great information. Just a reminder for everybody on the webinar that this will be available at the battle website at www.centralfloridabotb.org. Again, another shout out to our battle sponsors. We wouldn't be able to do this without them. If your organization is interested in becoming a sponsor, there's information again on our website. You just click the sponsor link. And so what's next for Cynthia and the Battle of the Buildings? We also have our series of webinars that are going to be continuing here at the schedule. Our next one is going to be September 20th, and it's going to focus on waste management solutions. So we encourage everybody to please join us for that particular webinar as well. And we'll lead into questions that you guys have for Brittany, Burns, or Tara. So anybody on the line have any questions?
Wow, I didn't think we were going to answer everything.
Okay. Well, we've got, do you want to go really quick about some of the additional resources that are available out there for folks?
Sure. Yeah, so we have a bunch more information on the WaterSense website, and some of them I mentioned, but I put them at the end of the presentation because I didn't know how much time we would have. So I encourage you to take a look at some of them. One of them is a billing and tracking pitfall slide that we just put together because of some of the things that we've heard from people about the things that can go wrong while you're trying to track your water. One of them is you really want to verify your facility's rate class and meter size on your water bill because sometimes it can be incorrect and you can be overcharged for your water usage. And that's obviously a problem. So the other thing you want to do is you can look at your bills and match that up with some of the work that you've been doing to monitor your water meter, and then you may find problems, you may find differences. Because water meters do require some maintenance, that can be something that just isn't working correctly. So one of the things you can do is work with your utility to correct these discrepancies. I didn't know that you could do that until I started working on this program. And it is quite helpful, especially if you have a pretty large facility, so that if you have issues, you can talk to them and they'll give you a credit, basically. And then another thing is that some of the bills cover multiple meters, so you just got to be careful in how you're actually tracking it, because you don't want to be lumping them all together and basically you would be masking a problem area. And then another thing, in some places they give credits on sewer charges if you can demonstrate that the water isn't going back to the sewer. So that can be helpful for irrigation and cooling towers. So that's something to think about or talk to your utility about. We also have a lot of information about commercial kitchens for those of you that have them in your facility, or a restaurant on the first floor, for example, of your facility. And one of the really great things is that a lot of the Energy Star certified equipment are actually 20 to 90% more water efficient. So that's another example of looking at, you're getting a really efficient product when you find an Energy Star or WaterSense labeled product. As Burns mentioned, if you have a food disposal system, it does run water continuously from 2 to 15 gallons per minute. So that's something that you don't really need, especially if it's not in use constantly. And you can really avoid that by just scraping the food off the dishes instead of washing it off, basically. And then you can use that for composting. And then if you have steam systems, especially steam cookers, steam kettles, you really want to make sure that you can look for leaks in the steam and reuse the condensate water as much as you can. You can also install a WaterSense labeled pre-rinse spray valve, and that can help you save water and energy on rinsing the dishes before they go in the dishwasher. So the Energy Star program has a really awesome calculator that actually will go through and show you how much water and energy you'll save based on the different projects that you have. So if you have a kitchen, I'd encourage you to take a look. This is an example of the checklist, one of the checklists that I was talking about earlier. And this is one that we created to just kind of help you go through, and you can print it out and just walk through your facility, and it'll actually just kind of prompt you of things that you could do throughout so that you can start reducing your water use pretty quickly. This is a picture of our best practices guidebook. It covers all these different categories. As I mentioned, there's 36 of them, 36 different kinds of equipment and fixtures. And this is all online. So it's a pretty hefty book. It's about 300 pages, but you can use parts of it. It's very set up so that you can just look at toilets, for example. But we have information for all different types of equipment, including laboratory and medical equipment if you're a hospital. So if you are trying to figure out what to do in one specific area of your facility, you can take a look at this and see what your options might be. This is just an example to show you what it looks like. So basically we go through an overview of each technology and then put in some operation and maintenance and user education tips, and then also retrofit and replacement options. And we give you the calculator. We have calculations in the built in so that you can actually figure out what your water, energy, and dollar savings would be. And then we have, well, I have to update this slide. We have about 19 or 20 case studies from all different types of facilities using these. This is a resource that Energy Star put together for their, basically, I think it was their boot camp version of their Battle of the Buildings. And they went through and made some signs and other artwork that you can use throughout your facility to reduce your energy use by your visitors or guests or employees. And those are already ready and available online, so you don't have to make it yourself. And there's a bunch for energy, a bunch for water, some for waste, and I believe that they are adding some more in the coming months. So take a look at that. There's a bunch there that you can just tap into. And then we also have some recorded webinars, and we covered a whole bunch of different topics, as I mentioned, but we actually dive really deeply into some of the specifics of these different areas of water use, and many of them include case studies. So I encourage you, if you're interested, take a look on our website and check out the recorded webinars. And then if you have questions, these are the contact information for us and for Energy Star. So if you have questions that you want a technical question answered, you can contact us and we'll help you as much as we can. So I think that's it for today. Thank you all for listening in. And do you guys have any questions about any of that other stuff, or did you think of any questions while I was talking?
Doesn't sound like any, but Tara, thank you so much, and thank you for providing the contact information. If anybody has questions that they think of afterwards when we are off the webinar and off the call, feel free to either reach out to Tara or reach out to the Sophia email address. It's sophia.cf.usgbc@gmail.com. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us, and thank you for our wonderful presenters. This is a lot of great information.